If you are a fan of a Pac-12 football team, you're probably a fan of a Big 12 football team, at least in the next 5 years, that is.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Baylor. Thank you for making Locked On Baylor your first listen every single day. I am surviving finals week from Sports Illustrated's Inside the Bears, and that is Big Game Boomer, John Whitaker. John, the last time you were on this show, it was literally a year ago this week.
Was it?
Yeah, it was a whole year ago. I do think nothing is a mistake here at Locked On Baylor. You had 42,000 followers on Twitter. Today, John, you have 80,000 followers on Twitter. A lot, even then we talked about how a lot had changed for you. The old Big Game Boomer account's doing all right.
Yeah, well, we're doing good, man. It's been crazy. I've been doing this for like 2 years now. And almost 80,000 followers, doing it on Instagram as well. It's been fun, man. Been traveling all over the country. It's been fun, but I'm ready for football season. These next couple months it's the talking season now, as Steve Spurrier would say. So, happy to be back on the show.
Well, John, here's what's interesting. You say talking season. I've run the analytics our whole company has it locked on. Our college channel in the month of April did more views than any month all time. We beat the NBA channel in April because of things like spring football, quarterback battles, but mostly expansion. That's been the hot topic here, and it's ever growing. I think it was Nicole Arbach had tweeted a couple of days ago about ESPN and the Pac-12, and there were murmurs that ESPN had completely pulled out, and they said no. And there have been so many kind of in, kind of out things with this league and TV deals and expansion, and now John, 5 years from now, will there be a Pac-12 as we know it?
I don't think so. No. I mean, you lose your two big guys, UCLA, USC. We know that Washington and Oregon don't want to be there. So it's really just a matter of time. I think we'll probably hear some news on this. When did the UCLA USC news drop last year? I mean, it dropped, I remember, like right after the College World Series. So
it's been a while.
Yeah. So I think once this sports calendar is done for 2022, 23, I think something will happen in late June, July. We'll hear something. I mean, and it tells you the Pac-12 hasn't signed a media deal yet for their TV. I mean, so there's definitely a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. But I mean, I'd say for sure that the Pac-12 will not be a thing in 2030.
John, I can already tell you, Oregon State fan 863 is in the comments immediately saying, well, the Big 12, that's how they sound in Oregon, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
The Big 12 lost Texas and Oklahoma. So you're making the case UCLA and USC leave, and the Pac-12, with the TV deal, everything considered, is starting to implode. Well, I get it. There are Pac-12 fans that say, hey, Texas and Oklahoma left the Big 12. They stayed healthy. What do you think makes this different about the two premier teams in the Pac-12 leaving as compared to what Texas and OU did in the Big 12?
Because Texas and OU are two iconic brands in sports. And I mean, they're leaving to go to a bigger market or to a bigger conference. They're going to be making $40 million more a year. But yeah. I mean, I think what channel are Pac-12 games going to be on this new TV deal that they're talking about? I mean, they're going to be on PBS or C-SPAN? I mean, who wants the Pac-12 on their TV?
The Nintendo DSs? You think we get a deal with Nintendo and just you have to buy a DS to watch Washington State play Cal this weekend?
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be some crazy thing like that, streaming thing. I think they see the writing on the wall. Brett Yormark, the guy is a sharpshooter. From everything I've heard, he's trying to wheel and deal some crazy stuff behind the scenes. So I wouldn't be shocked if we're in July and we see, Oregon and Washington finally gave in and decide to join the Big 12. I could totally see that happening because just what's the Pac-12? Do you really think adding San Diego State and SMU, is that going to really add value to the Pac-12?
No.
I mean, yeah, no. So I think they joined the Big 12. eventually, and they're sitting there and just kind of waiting for an invite from the Big Ten eventually, because that's where those two schools want to be.
Yeah.
Is in the Big Ten, Oregon and Washington.
And basketball success cannot carry you. There'll be people that say, oh, San Diego State's great at basketball. Right. You've got to have a powerful brand in football, like the 4 teams added to the Big 12 do, to have sustainability, especially marketability in college athletics. At SMU, you may think it brings you the Dallas market. It doesn't.
No.
It doesn't. It brings you SMU fans that are few and far between.
Yeah.
The one crazy thing, though, John, there's so many people who think still Oregon and Washington fans like, oh, we're a shoe-in for the Big Ten. Why do you have those two teams as better fits, or at least better odds to go to the Big 12 and the Big Ten?
Well, so I don't think that the odds are leaning towards the Arizona schools, Colorado, and Utah. I just think at the end of the day, when it comes down to the money and how much money you're going to be making, I think that Oregon and Washington will eventually be able to make more money in the future Big 12, whereas if they stay in the Pac-12 and get some crappy media deal. But I think Colorado already wants to be back in the Big 12. Utah, I know the fans don't want to be in the Big 12, but because of BYU, they think that they're better than BYU, so they don't want to be in the conference with BYU. But I think that they would be a good fit. Obviously, the Arizona schools. I just think that there's no way the Pac-12 is going to survive this, and if they do, they're going to be worse off. Just because, they're going to be like a second tier below the Power 5, I think, after this whole shakeup.
Yeah. Now, John, the Colorado situation, too, is one that has gotten sticky for me. I was of the thought 2 weeks ago, like, oh, great. I really want Colorado to be in the Big 12. Their chancellor comes out and says, hey, we're staying in the Pac-12. We're good. We're here. And within 48 hours, the entire football team enters the transfer portal, and the spring game is a debacle. It felt like as good as Colorado looked as a selling point for the Pac-12 to say, look what we've got. Our branding's going to be better. Our marketing's better. And then that entire deal came crashing down with the last 2 weeks, Colorado really looking like a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
Do you see Colorado devaluing itself day by day? Because it's what it looks like with everything taking place right now.
Yeah. Let's look at Colorado. Over the last 20 years, they were good in the 90s at football, have had some success in basketball. They don't have a baseball team. So there has not been a lot of success. I think the move to the Pac-12 was horrible for Colorado, but I do still think they're a big enough brand to where they're still attractive to join for a conference. Because then you get if you get the Colorado, you get the Denver market. And they have a pretty passionate fan base. They've just been so bad over the last decade that it's hard for them to get excited about something. But over the last, since Dion has been hired, I have seen more Colorado fans come out of the woodwork than I have in the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
So I think the brand is still there for Colorado. Now the transfer portal thing with Colorado, that was just a nightmare. And the way that Dion's doing this, we'll see if it pays off. I personally don't. I think it was too aggressive and just cutting kids. I think that team will struggle to win 4 or 5 games next year. I just don't think they have the depth in the trenches. But to answer your question, I think Colorado is still an attractive brand to add to a major conference.
I could see them being one of the first 4. If not, I think Oregon and Washington are spearheading this. Once they jump ship from the Pac-12, then you're going to see the other schools, the 4 corner schools, basically do the exact same thing. I posed it like this: Colorado is in a lifeboat, and they are clinging to the Titanic. The Pac-12 is just steadily sinking. And then Colorado, in the last 2 weeks, took the flare gun, and instead of shooting it in the air, they just right through the bottom of the lifeboat. Like, we're going down with this thing, baby. And they're not one of the schools that has to do that. Oregon State, you should cling to the Pac-12 because nobody's shopping Oregon State. Nobody's shopping Washington State. And you can make that case for a couple other of these schools. Even to this point, and a lot of this is football recency, schools like Stanford, they're great at everything that isn't a revenue sport.
Right.
That's the issue. The brand is there. They're the Vanderbilt of the West Coast, but they're so bad at the
Yeah.
sports that matter, and that's a serious problem. But John, this is a lot of Pac-12 talk. I want to jump back into the Big 12, where your Oklahoma Sooners are leaving what was the Titanic and is now slowly reemerging from the water. But first, John, one thing that will never sink. That's Built Bar. Folks, I got a big thing for you here. It's finals week. And as you can see, I haven't taken a shower in like 4 days. My hair is not okay. My health overall is not great. So I've decided to do the Built Bar challenge. I haven't slept in a while. And so Built Bar's 14 grams of protein have been huge for me. I'm on the Built Bar challenge where I eat nothing but Built Bars every day. Because they're delicious and they're healthy. They taste amazing. That's what I do. I drink these. I have my candy apple crisp bang. It's my third of the day. It's 12:15 at the time of recording. And I eat Built Bars. And I'm surviving. I'm still here. I love the churro ones. They're my favorite. I've run out of churros, so I'm now on peanut butter brownie. But it's 100% real chocolate. There's only 130 calories. So, like, I can eat, 10 of them, and that's 1,300 calories. That's way below the 2,000 calorie daily recommended. 4 grams of sugar, 17 grams of protein. You don't need to wait to get a box either. Just go to Walmart, go to Sam's Club. I've been making Sam's Club runs all week. And you get a 4-bar box at Walmart, a 13-bar box at Sam's Club. This thing's easy, man. Go to Built.com, too. Order it there. They'll come to your house. They'll ship them to your home. I'm going to Alaska this summer. They're going to ship me Built Bars. So I'm doing the Built Bar Challenge. I challenge you to do the exact same thing. At Built.com, at Sam's Club, at Walmart. I'm still alive. You can still be alive, too, at Built.com. All right, John. The Big 12. You got Oklahoma and Texas leaving. We already talked about that. Now, Cincinnati, UCF, BYU, and Houston coming in. We are more than a year out of those schools making that announcement. We've known this now for a couple of years that these teams are coming in, and now next season. Do those 4 schools have the same luster that they did 2 years ago, or is this a better or worse deal in your eyes based on the trajectory of those 4 schools?
In my opinion, it's a better deal. I mean, they should have added these 4 schools. I think. Well, how many years ago was it when they started the talks of expansion? Was it 17?
Or 16, 17 in there.
Yeah. I mean, they should have added those schools then. Honestly, I think it was OU and Texas that didn't want some of those schools in. But I mean, I think the value for these schools is skyrocketing. Just with everything that's going on in college sports right now, and you've got 4 successful schools. They're good at other sports in major media markets. Looking back, that may be one of the best expansion moves that we've ever seen. Getting these schools and they all have very passionate fan bases that will spend money and travel to games. And I love the move. I think it's great. And, should have happened. If it happened 4 or 5 years ago, OU and Texas may still be in the Big 12.
Yeah. John, you have not been controversial enough, which is shocking people right now.
What?
I know that there's so many people out there who are like, dude, Big Game Boomer has no idea what he's talking about. And those people are idiots. You are maybe the best. Like, if I had a marketing firm, I would hire you to be the CEO of my marketing firm because you have taken these graphics and blown, because people get just so up in arms and take it so seriously.
Oh, it's crazy.
So I'm tired of lobbing you softballs. Of these 4 teams, which one has the least power in leverage? Which one has the most? What's the biggest brand? Who's the best move of these 4? And who's going to struggle in their first few seasons here in the Big 12?
Well, I think they all struggle this year, next year, because I mean, if you just look, like, who are the worst teams in the Big 12 right now? I would say Iowa State and West Virginia. Yeah. Those are still tough games. That's tougher than playing South Florida and Temple.
True.
I mean, on your schedule. So those are arguably the 2 worst teams in the conference right now. They're going to be dogfights between any of those new schools, and they're coming in the Big 12. So if you're talking brand, I say BYU is the best, or is the biggest brand, just because of their national reach with the Mormon Church and everything. I would say UCF is definitely up there in the Orlando market. Just the recruiting hotbed. They have a very, very passionate fan base. Their school, I think they have the largest student body in the country. I think it's like over 100,000 students. So massive alumni base there, very young alumni base. I think they've got a lot to offer. And then, Houston is, basketball is good, but I'm going to go down to there for when they play West Virginia later this season.
Yeah.
But just they just don't have the fan base there in Houston. And then Cincinnati, I will give them credit. They do have a pretty passionate fan base. Brand wise, I'd say they're not that big, but definitely have an opportunity to grow here with being in a bigger market and making the college football playoff. 2 years ago now. So I would say BYU, then UCF, Cincinnati, Houston would be my 1 through 4 in brand rankings for the new schools.
Houston to me is a lot like an SMU in that you think you're getting the Houston market, more or less. It's a big pro. It's a big pro town. People
you go there. You go to Houston, you see probably more Texas A&M fans than anything, and LSU fans to a certain extent. In that area,
they share a big.
I agree with you.
There's so many Astros fans that live in LSU, that live in Louisiana. That's their baseball team, and so the market there. I think you're 100%. It's not a college town. There are not people there that are just big Houston Cougar fans, and you see that in attendance numbers too. John, if you're the Big 12, though, Brett Yormark, you've already talked about his business savvy. The guy he's a headhunter. He's coming for other schools. He's coming for expansion. Do you see the Big 12 growing to 16, 18 teams in the next 5 years? As we've already predicted, the Pac-12 will not exist as it does in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I think they'll go to 16. And depending on what happens with basketball, I could see because from what I've read and heard, that Yormark wants the Big 12 to be, the premier basketball conference, which I think you could argue it already is.
Yeah.
But if you go out and get I've heard, Gonzaga, if you grab some Big East schools for basketball only, let's say they get UConn. Why not get UConn? Get them. You could maybe get UConn for even football as well. With, Jim Moore, they do have a pretty solid fan base up there. I'll give them credit. But I could see a bunch of different angles here of how he expands. I think they definitely expand. It's just how many teams, who are they going to add? It's a crystal ball right now.
Yeah. The UConn conversation, again, that UConn 837 will be in the chat. It's like, no, that'll never happen. 2016, UConn was begging. They started a website, the school did, to build their brand and their ploy to join the Big 12. They wanted to be in the league so bad in 2016. And you can't tell me that entire sentiment is gone as their football program wallows away and is in a pit of mediocrity, which they probably would be. They might be the Vanderbilt of the Big 12, but at least you got a shot to beat some.
Hey, they're going to surprise some folks this year. UConn is going to be sneaky good. They'll make a bowl game.
Oh, John, you knew where I was going. That's what? That's a perfect segue into our last segment. We got a couple minutes left here, John. I want your. We don't even need to do 5, even if you want to do 3. The hottest takes going into this football off season that tread into next year. I don't need you to make any this team's going to win the national championship. But what are 3 big things you think, all right, this is not on anybody else's radar, but you see it coming in college football, either this off season or going into next year's regular season?
Well, I see Florida State, the rise of Florida State. We saw it last year. They won 10 games. Basically, their whole roster's back almost. Yeah. And I really think they've got a shot here to do something special and make the college football playoff. I know every time I say that everyone's like, oh, well, you said NC State's going to make it to the playoff. Florida State and NC State are not the same thing. Okay. Sure. Florida State won a national championship less than 10 years ago. This is a school with much more talented players than NC State. I think they can give Clemson a run for their money and win the ACC. Now that game in Orlando, LSU versus LSU versus Florida State week 1 is going to be off the charts. I think LSU wins that game. They get revenge. But I think Florida State goes on and runs the table and gets to the college football playoff at least. So that would be one of my my hot take, although it seems like everyone's kind of picking Florida State. Big 12, Big 12, hot takes in the Big 12. It's really hard for me because I just don't see really a team that's sticking out this offseason.
People love Texas, John. Surprise. Nobody ever loves Texas in the offseason.
I saw like RG3 saying that this team can win a national championship. And I mean, yeah, they've got great players every year. On paper, they look great, but let's see how they'll lose a couple games they aren't supposed to. That's just how Texas has been since they won the national championship in 2005. So I just don't know. If you had to tell me right now who is going to win the Big 12, I guess I'd say Kansas State, just because of, but they lost a lot. You watched the draft; they lost a lot of good players.
Yep.
So, man, it's wide open. But my hottest take, I think Florida State is going to get to the college football playoff. That is what I'm sticking to this whole offseason.
I like the Big 12 idea on Kansas State, because remember last year it was very similar. It was, this league's going to be wide open. There's so much parity in the Big 12 in football, and people were kind of defaulting to Baylor as the
I picked Baylor. I picked Baylor to win last year, and look what it's the repeat. A lot of people have asked me, hey, what team could you see being the TCU of last year in the Big 12? And I've said Baylor, just because I think that they've got the continuity down there to, come back and potentially surprise some people this season. I just think the quarterback position is really what it comes down to for Baylor. We'll see how they look. And I haven't done deep dives in the rosters yet, but start that here in a couple of weeks. But I could see Baylor bouncing back and at least going maybe 8-4. We'll see.
Baylor is really good at surprising folks, whether that's good or bad. They are, last season, preseason top 10 team, and pretty much drops off the face of the earth. You were there for the Air Force game. It's not good.
Yeah. Oh man, that was the coldest bowl game I've ever been to.
That was terrible.
But thankfully we were inside the press box, but
even in the press box, it was cold. Like, I know I have no room to complain, but it was just, that was miserable.
It's not safe to be outside. Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
Those people outside.
And the Colorado kids that were ready for it at TCU said just one of the low points of Baylor football, despite it being a bowl game
in TCU Stadium. How humiliating is that?
Everything about that was just not great. And then obviously the product of the field wasn't. So a lot of question marks for Baylor. But this is a sneaky. You have 8 home games next season.
Yeah, that's great. It's huge.
And Baylor usually plays well at home, and they have been in the last 10 years pretty bad on the road, but Aranda flipped that script a little bit last year with wins at Oklahoma, wins at Iowa State and Texas Tech, and then the home struggles were there. So now going into
TCU.
Next season,
you guys should have beat TCU.
Oh, you're telling me, John?
Yeah, if it wasn't for that fire drill field goal kick, y'all should have won.
The bazooka on the Brazos.
Yeah, that's the thing though. The Big 12 is probably the most balanced conference in football in the country. It really is, because I think the best team in the preseason could potentially finish last in the Big 12.
Yeah.
Just because there's just so much parity. There's no front runner.
Yeah, you got to remember West Virginia last year gave TCU. TCU was had a 1-score lead inside of a minute to go and was forced into a 4th down situation where they go for it. And if that play goes differently, West Virginia, maybe the worst team truly in the Big 12 last year, was on the cusp of beating your national championship contender. And I think you're right. It's not that there's maybe as much parity as there's balance. Just a really consistent league. And John, to me, and I will end it here, that is true of the Big 12, even without Oklahoma and Texas. There is still good quality football.
It's still going to be one of the most entertaining conferences to watch in football, basketball, baseball. It's going to be great. I'm excited to see where they go with it. Part of me kind of wishes, as an OU fan, that we kind of stuck around, because to be honest, I'm a little concerned about OU going in the SEC. I think it's going to be a very big adjustment, and I hope that Sooner fans are ready for it.
Yeah. Well, John, thanks for joining the show today, man. Always
Absolutely,
need to get your takes, dude.
Yeah.
I love
anytime, man. Just appreciate it.
For those that are listening, Drake Toll from Sports Illustrated's Inside the Bears. That's John Whitaker, Big Game Boomer. If you don't follow him on Twitter, do follow him and comment on every post that he makes about how mad you are about it, because that is really antithetical to your entire point as a fan. And it just boosts John's post to the moon, and I love it. John, Thanks again for doing this, brother.
Yeah,
And
no
best of
problem, Jake.
luck going into the next football season with all your stuff. Over 100,000 followers within the next 5 months, but by Christmas, over 100,000 followers.
Yeah, my aggressive goal is to hit 100,000 before the season starts. We'll see.
I love it.
We'll see. It's just fun.
To those listening for making Locked On Baylor your first listen every single day. Come back on Monday. Baylor and BYU, not a protected rivalry. Should they be? The answer is yes. We'll dive deeper into that on Locked On Baylor.